This series of lunchtime conversations intends to capture insights from some of society's thought leaders, given the unprecedented times we're living in. It's the 25th of May, Bank Holiday Monday, here in the UK, and there's an easing of measures in England that have been in place to protect against COVID-19 and planning for recovery. Part of my role at Warwick University is to make sure our education programmes remain relevant and continue to serve the needs of society. To do this, it's important that I remain part of the research and industry community. The people I'm speaking to in this series form my professional network, and I rely on them to inform and help steer our educational programmes. We've seen seismic shifts in all areas of life. The extraordinarily pervasive nature of COVID-19 will have lasting effects. To discuss this, my lunchtime guest today is Amanda Lam. She's the manager of product management at Hong Kong Disneyland, an active volunteer for Product Tank Hong Kong, an executive committee member and podcaster for Hong Kong PDA user group. She also lectures on my programmes when they're delivered in Hong Kong, which I'm very grateful for, and is herself an alumni of the Warwick Masters programme. So Amanda, welcome to lunch.
Hi, nice to meet you, Mairi. It's
Yeah.
great to speak with you.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you too. Now you're based in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
which over the past 12 months has had a very difficult time. This series intends to capture insights with a backdrop of living with and through a pandemic, but Hong Kong has had a troubled year. The pandemic bringing a close to pro-democracy protests, only to have them return this weekend with renewed fervour. Can I ask you first about how you saw Hong Kong responding to the coronavirus pandemic? And why do you think Hong Kong was so able to contain it? They did a good job. Why?
Yeah, I think it's all about Hong Kongers' general awareness of the virus outbreak, because we had the lesson back in the SARS back in 2003, where we had a very serious outbreak, and it took more than 200 lives from our hospitals and general public, and it was a very terrible memory for most of the citizens in the city. So we have learned a lot, like what we should do. For example, whenever we go to public places, Hong Kong is so dense and crowded city, and it is hard to avoid like social distance. In UK, maybe you can still keep a long distance with others, especially if you are not in London. But in Hong Kong, it's hard because if you go to public transport or just shopping malls, there are so many people around you. So we have a very strong awareness of wearing surgical masks when we go out, because that was the lesson we learned from the SARS outbreak. Initially, the government wasn't really reacting quite quickly, and the people in Hong Kong are actually doing a marvelous job in reminding the government, hey, please block the border. Hey, please advocate people to wear surgical masks.
Yes.
And a lot of the professionals, especially from the Hong Kong University medical schools and also Chinese universities of Hong Kong, so they also advise people to wear surgical masks and list out a lot of measures to help stop the outbreak. Like, for example, you must close the lid when you flush the toilet, and you must keep social distancing and keep washing your hands with water, preferably, or alcohol. If you don't have water with you all the time. So I think that's a lot of things that have been taught by the public.
Exactly. Even I notice, when I come to Hong Kong, which I
Yeah.
get the opportunity to do maybe once a year or so to deliver our lectures. I have had the opportunity to. Certainly, I'm mindful. I'm very aware that the students in Hong Kong are much more proactive about wearing masks, just if they have a cold or if they have a flu or something that in the UK really isn't common practice, because I guess we didn't experience SARS. So for us, it's still culturally a bit I think there's still a little bit of resistance, although people are more comfortable with the idea now. But culturally, there's a bit of a resistance to the idea of, why would you want to wear a mask? And it's not something we're comfortable or sociable. So culturally, it's difficult
Yeah.
to accept.
I think it's a learned culture in Hong Kong. I think
Mm,
back in maybe if you say 20 years ago, before it starts, I don't think Hong Kongers are used to wear surgical masks,
yeah.
but it's like a more a culture that we cultivated to
Mm,
help us and to help others to stop the uh, infectious disease.
mm,
No matter it's COVID-19 or just seasonal flu, that's really helpful. And I
yes.
see from nowadays when you go to the street in Hong Kong, you will find it you find yourself in a very vulnerable position if you do not wear a mask and people looking at you all the time and
Mm,
you feel the pressure. It's more like the other way around. Like
yes.
maybe in UK, if I wear a mask, people will stare at me. Why are you wearing a mask? What
Yeah.
are you actually sick or not? But I think the lesson that we learn is that because the disease has so many so long incubation period and
Yeah.
so many patients are actually not having any symptoms. So
Mm,
wearing a mask actually helps stop spreading the disease.
mm. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So, I think your day job, Hong Kong Disneyland. I
Mhm.
mean, that's a fun factory. That is a factory of experience and fun.
Yeah,
And pandemics are kind of a bit of a a contraposition where it's not so much fun and experience. So, um, how was the business affected in Disneyland, and how did Hong Kong Disneyland respond? And and how did you make decisions? And how did you plan to make decisions to put things in place to reopen? How did those decisions get made?
right. So actually, this global outbreak of the coronavirus is actually impacting the travel industry a lot all over
Mm,
the world. And as you may have heard from the news, that we have like the Disney Group in general has closed all the theme parks all over the
yes.
world. And Hong Kong Disneyland was the second to close the park. So after Shanghai, so we actually we feel sad about this, of course,
Yeah.
because we love the place a lot. We love our guests a lot, and we actually like to see them like enjoying the park and the resort
Mm,
facilities we have here. But unfortunately, that's the fact, and we have to uh, impose a lot of the measures to make sure our guests who are still staying at our hotel, because our hotels are not closed.
mm,
We have three hotels in Hong Kong, and only one of them left open. And guests staying at that hotel would still have to measure their body temperature, and we have a lot of precautionary measures to make sure that they stay hygiene and stay the social distance when they're having meals and etc. So we are actually training our cast members to make sure these measures are in place to make sure people feel safe staying at our hotel and also there are difficult moments like where, for example, because the park is closed and the transportation is also becoming difficult
yeah.
because the railway has stopped the service um, from the Sunday Bay station to the Hong Kong Disneyland station. So we have to arrange different shuttle bus service to make sure the guests can still travel around. And For our cast members, we still work as usual because we still have a lot of projects to work on.
Can I just interrupt for a moment there? Just if anybody is overhearing this conversation, you're calling your employees, your service providers, they're cast members,
Yes.
which is a really nice, I think something I know you've shared in the past that um for those who don't know, in Disney, the language you use for the positions you hold really come from Disney, from production, from film making, from theatre, so you have, instead of service operators or service providers, you have cast members. Is that correct?
Yes. So we call ourselves cast members because even we are actually a backstage employee, we still need to perform.
Yes.
We still have the same standards of performance, and we make sure our performance is at an excellent level. So that's the terminology to remind ourselves we are always delivering a good show to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah, and
And I
the
hear very
pandemic, yeah,
much safety first. I hear from you very much that,
safety
which I
first,
think is
yes.
just something that has been echoed, I think, from other conversations I've had, that when safety becomes critical, it becomes accepted by staff, customers, backstage, front stage. When there's a suggestion that some action needs to be taken due to safety, then it becomes almost inaction straight away and without any challenge, which I think is, it's kind of reassuring for me, I think, to realize that there are thresholds that companies just don't try to work around. Now's the time to close. Now's the time to stop this. Now's the time to, and then to find ways to make things happen within that. So closing 2 of the 3 hotels and closing the park, taking that decision, um, it's reassuring for someone like me to hear how quickly those decisions have been taken.
Yeah, so our management team actually closely monitors the situation, and they have like daily meetings to really
Mm.
discuss through what's happening in the city and any follow-up actions that we need to make in order to ensure our guests and cast members are at the safest way position to live with. And we are actually for our cast members, we can especially the backstage cast members, we have the option to work from home. And well, in Hong Kong, there has not been a lockdown of the city, unlike in UK that you cannot actually get out
Yes.
from your home. We can still go to do our casual shopping and just to wear surgical masks anywhere you go and keep the social distance. But uh, actually, we do not have any lockdown. So, but still, our company still advise our cast members to stay at home as most time as it can be. So we rely on a lot of these virtual meetings and video conference or voice conference tools to stay in touch and get the work rolling and keep the projects going on.
Yes.
And I think people are getting used to the new way of work. And we are actually, well, because I'm actually from the digital product team, so I we have been quite used to the way to all these tools, and because we have to work with vendors and our uh, teammates in the US as well. So we're quite used to the tools, but some other teams are not quite used to it. So it took uh, maybe 2 to 3 weeks to
Yes.
really get used to, get comfortable to the new format and
And
more
how do you,
frequent syncing.
for the people who are the cast members who are more remote from you,
Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about the people in the hotel being retrained to ensure safety standards are kept, to ensure that temperatures are monitored and that hygiene is adhered to very strictly,
Yeah.
um, how did you roll out that kind? How did you decide the sort of standard operating procedures, and how did you roll them out? How was that training delivered?
There was there's actually a committee that work out like all these operations. So that we have different teams, like we have hotel operations team, park operations teams, and they have their own leaders, which is actually part of the steering committee, and we have like a advisory team to make sure that these uh, these practices are actually in place uh, based on the experience that they have dealing with guests previously, and what will be the likelihood that the guest may ask and may complain or
Yes.
may raise out, right? So I think there's a forum that is held at least weekly to sync up all the different departments and teams
Mm.
to ensure that these practices are in place, and also try to keep reviewing how the newest practices are being performed and whether we need to make changes or tweaks to
Yes.
it and keep
How do you,
keep
what
reviewing it.
So when I talked a couple of weeks ago with Peter Lynham, he talked about the idea that there was targets that you looked for before deciding to reopen um, any of your services. So his was from experience of reopening flights, where he would be looking for. I think the example he used was the volcanic ash. What's Disney looking for as an indicator? Do you wait for government, or do you have your own measures as to what is acceptable for them to say, now we're going to reopen and redeploy? And how well is that, or how is that communicated with everybody within and without the organization?
I'm personally not in that committee to decide whether the park is reopened or not. But from what I know is that the steering committee actually refers to quite a few indicators, like whether the government has announced, like whether what would be the newest updates from the government on the regulations,
Yep.
especially on social distancing requirements, uh, and there are indicators like whether the schools actually reopen, and and whether there are any restrictions on the number of people that can be concurrently at the same place,
Yes.
and those kind of things. There are a wide range of factors that we need to assess. That those are external factors. There are also internal factors like whether we are ready to reopen the park, like whether we have trained all our staffs, all our cast members to
Yes. Yes.
uh, to to uh, to deploy the new measures for the health checking, the temperature checking.
Mm.
Um, they know where to assist the guests when they need to, for example, get some alcohol gel, or so there are a lot, like a long checklist, like
Mm.
we have to check before we say, okay, we are comfortable to reopen. So up till now, we haven't announced anything yet. So um, but given that Shanghai Disneyland has already reopened recently, so we actually also learned a lot from them as well, like what would be the likely
Mm.
lessons learned from their
I guess that's the
measures and
advantage
then
of being a global chain, that you can learn from other areas as they
yes,
go through different experiences. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm. Yeah, and I guess Hong Kong itself, the pro-democracy protests that have been, well, last this weekend, so we certainly all over the news here that they've resurged, and that how does that impact upon appetite for people, for families wanting to go to Disneyland Hong Kong? And do you think that's going to have a lasting effect? Do you think your market size will? Do people want more fantasy? Because Or are people kind of not really looking for that level of escape at the moment and want to kind of hunker down? What do you think? What do you just intuit, what do you see as being the implications for the business going forward?
I think this recent civil unrest is actually quite, um, I would say, affecting the general atmosphere of how other countries, other tourists perceive Hong Kong, as well
Yeah.
as how locals, um, the mood, right? Like
Mm.
whether I have the right mood to
Yes.
play, right? And I think there had been quite a big impact as well, like reflected in our annual report. Like we do have a lot of impact from these social unrest. So I think it's also quite a tough decision, quite a tough moment for us to
Yes.
really emphasize what kind of happiness you can have or how you can escape from the reality when you
Yeah.
come to Hong Kong Disneyland, without mentioning all the sad things in the city.
Yeah.
Um, and it is also hard, like for locals, like because we do have different views. Like sometimes
Mm.
people have different views, different political stance, and especially very people can have very diverse views
Yes.
based on their age and generations and what kind of things that they have experienced before. So we have to be very sensitive in terms of crafting our messages
Yeah.
when we communicate to guests or when we update our posts on social network, and those kind of things are actually quite challenging for us to
Yes.
kind of stay neutral, but respect each other's voice.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's not easy, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
try
No,
our best to really focus
yeah.
what we have to
The
deliver.
last time I came to Hong Kong was January this year, and it was a period of time where the unrest wasn't as great as it had been, but there was still a very, very kind of a kind of uncertainty and uncomfortableness, and a sense of caution when people were talking about views and opinions, not just because necessarily any fear of oppression, but almost a fear of just the personal conversation from one to another, just in case you may have different viewpoints, because the viewpoints are so emotive that you
Yes,
could see that communication is a real challenge, and a real expertise for those who get it right in Hong Kong at the moment. But can be really inflammatory if it's just off the mark a little bit.
yeah.
So a huge challenge there. Uh, but I guess, I mean, the Hong Kong is a city full of young people with bags of energy,
Hmm.
that are. I've been traveling there, as you know. I think the first time I came was actually 2003, just after the SARS had impacted, and I'm just struck by the ability of people in Hong Kong um, to regroup and to group and to create community and to generate ideas and to have that energy around them, almost all the time, that ability to organize, um, which I think is like, well, it's incredibly hopeful. It's an exciting place to be. It's always full of this dynamism and this energy of what do we do next? What do we do next? How do we bring people together? How do we learn? How do we share? And you're part of a volunteer at Product Tank. And I think
Yeah.
that's an organization that is just an exemplar of several organizations like that in Hong Kong, of that style of community growth. Can you tell me a little bit about Product Tank and what you do with them?
Right. I'm actually one of the organizers for the Product Tank Hong Kong community. So Product Tank is more like a product management community. It's a global community founded by an organization called Mind the Product in London. So we actually have different Product Tank meetups established in more than 90 cities around the world. So Hong Kong is one of them. So we
Yes.
had our first meetup back in 2017, so it's around 3 years. So we are actually organizing meetups to advocate product management. Product management, in our understanding, is more like how do you manage your product or services from the very initial planning uh, in terms of what kind of product we want to build or deliver, and in a strategic point of view, and then work with different stakeholders, for example, external stakeholders, marketing people or finance people, whoever your product would need to be
Yes.
involved, and then work with your internal people like the team of designers, developers. Usually, I'm actually from the digital product point of view, but the same principle can be applied to any other products as well. If you're working on tangible products like you're building a car or an airplane, you can also apply similar principles. So the product manager has to look after all the stages of product development
Yes.
from the very initiation down to development, and then testing, and then launching it, and then review the entire product launch, whether it performs as what you expected, whether you meet your key performance indicators, and
Mm.
then keep revising or tweaking your products until you get a successful business outcome. So we try to advocate these kind of practices and knowledges, and by inviting different people from different backgrounds, like people who are experts in user experience, or experts in analytics,
Yes.
or
I think I'd
expertise
like,
from
yeah,
service design, for
yes.
example, or even psychologists. Actually, like whoever expertise that is beneficial to product managers. We invite them to the meetup and share with their knowledge, so we can all learn from it.
I think it's a really exciting I think it's the attitude. You build community and you are freely sharing the knowledge. And I think that's a really um it just serves society in the broadest way rather than feeling, insular and competitive and keep things closed. And so everybody will progress so much more quickly. So I
Yeah,
think it's commendable and it's exciting. It's a nice group of people that are giving up their time and investing their time into this with the expectation of learning and growing from.
yeah. I think you were part of our one of the
Mm.
uh, guest speaker last time, right?
It
So you
was,
have
yeah,
actually met some of our
yeah, it was
community members.
a lovely cross section of the business community, from those with experience, those with startup, and there to network as well as to learn. And it was just a very nice kind of space to bring people together. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's very good work, very nice work.
And
Um,
actually, coming Wednesday is our World Product Day. So
oh,
yeah, so we actually all the product tank communities around the world will celebrate the World Product Day by having either virtual meetup or
mm.
physical meetups, or
So what would we,
and
if anybody was overhearing this conversation, what would they Google, or what would they go and search to be able to find some information about it?
yeah, just go to worldproductday.com. So
Yep. World Product
that
Day.
will list out all the cities that are involving, and
Mm.
we will be all over the social network. So you will
Mm.
see a lot of like live streaming of the meetups, or conversations that you can join over Twitter and all those kind of things. So we do that every year. So hopefully this year we will have more cities participating, and we can cross learn each other from each other, because we have more, because of the pandemic.
Yes.
One plus sign of the story is that we can witness more online events than ever.
Yep.
So I think that's a good opportunities for us to learn from each other.
Yeah, I think certainly, I mean, people with your skill set behind you, understanding digital and understanding how to design a digital journey or experience along the way. Um, it's so many people have sort of suggested, your 5-year plan has been compressed into this past couple of months where people have just really accelerated their organizational capability in this space, and
Yeah.
having that knowledge and that experience behind you is so valuable just now, Amanda. So yeah, so I'll be really looking to hope that I can draw you back in to speak directly to our students in the next presentation of the course over in Hong Kong. But otherwise, I just wish you very well, and I really hope I get to meet up with you face to face sometime quite soon.
Yeah, definitely. We really miss you a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope you can come to Hong Kong as soon as possible.
Yes, yeah, me too. Well, thank you very much for sharing these insights, and they're enormously useful to help steer our educational programmes. For our current students, these insights and possibly the event on Wednesday could provide an excellent source of data to inform their current research. And for our wider Warwick community, so valuable just to have these insights and to share. So thank you. If anyone listening would like to hear more from Amanda, please drop me a line and I'll forward on. I'm on Warwick's website. If you're watching this on YouTube, follow the link on the closing slide. The series will also be made available as a podcast. Just search Insights Over Lunch on your preferred listening platform. I'm sure, Amanda, as well, I'll share your LinkedIn and Twitter and bits and pieces that I'm sure you're
Yeah.
very competent in your field with. Thank you very much. And I guess nothing more to be said. But for me, I'm going to enjoy my lunch. And for you, I guess it's dinner time.
Yes, might be the time.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you.